This is nothing but that sports talk. Were you ahead of the game? Welcome to Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafique Louison alongside Dakota London from Sports Illustrated. He's produced a lot of content for them. Diaz, who was a guest on my show not too long ago, he's been a guest on Sports Illustrated. Congratulations to her on get one on that one. And also you got actually Nicole Moss who was on it. Congratulations to her and congratulations to you for putting this content together.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Shout out to Grady. Shout out to Ash.
Why don't you talk about like how you got started in the media field from the ground up?
Yeah, no doubt. So when I was in college, I did a lot of media related stuff. So it started with news. So like I was working in our news station, such as like shooting stuff in the field or working in the studio with cameras or producing shows. And then I was always interested in sports. So I moved over to doing more sports content. So I was the producer for one of our talk shows. I was an executive producer for a radio show. I created actually another radio show, and I shot live college football. I shot live college basketball. I did video editing. I did camera work. So I did a lot of stuff around sports. And then when I graduated, I was fortunate enough to get a job at the CNN in 2015, and I was there for the election. That was quite the experience. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this long term. So I started trying to figure out ways how I can transition into sports. And I was blessed and fortunate enough to get a job at NBA TV in Atlanta. And that's kind of where like the sports run began. So I went NBA TV, the NBA, Bleacher Report, and now here at Sports Illustrated. So it's been quite the experience.
Okay, talk about like what is it like working for platforms such as Bleacher Report, NBA TV, and Turner Sports in general as a whole.
It's great. I mean, each place has its pros and cons. I mean, that's any company. You know, there's certain things that you like, there's certain things you don't like. The blessing for me was every place was unique within itself. So I got to take something from each place and be like, okay, this is something I can put in my toolbox for later on in life, or like, you know, I don't like this, so I'm not a fan of this so much. And it kind of helps. It helped me figure out what I wanted to do long term. Like when I went to NBA TV, my biggest thing was I wanted to produce. I wanted to produce. And my role there wasn't in producing, it was media management, which was, you know, still a key thing in sports. And like anybody who works in media management understands that like you capture all this footage and you do all these shows and stuff, like that stuff has to be stored somewhere. So it was in media management. When I went to the NBA, it was media management, but it was more content based a little bit. So it was far more like, all right, let's manage this media, but what is the media that we feel is like actually worth, you know, saving long term? Like if LeBron plays, yeah, all the highlights and footage in regards to that is much more valuable than, let's say, if Cameron Payne is playing. No shots at Cameron Payne, but I mean it's LeBron and Cameron Payne. So then after I left the NBA and went to Bleacher Report, I finally was in a position where I was producing, like I was actually creating content, and it, you know, it was natural for me, and I enjoyed it. And then I left Bleacher and came to SI, and it was more just, you know, doing the producing side. So um, all the roles I've had have all kind of been geared to try to get to one goal. And it's funny because now I kind of want to get away from producing, and like I've started doing a lot of diversity and inclusion, and I find that that work is far more fulfilling and substantial. I say like producing is like you're just trying to entertain a mob, the mob being sports fans. So it's good to like actually do roles or have a role that is specific to actually creating opportunities for others. So um, in 3 years, I may not even be interested in that. So, you know, it just kind of comes with the territory. The more you go and the more experience you garner, your interest change. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad you managed to find your spot at Sports Illustrated, where you're working with so many women in sports. Like,
Yeah.
what is the process of developing those content, getting people like Grady and Ashley and Blake on it?
Right. Well, it's funny. So, SI has, I mean, if we're being real, historically has not been a truly diverse company. Not even with just people of color, but women. So when I got hired in July of 2019, one of the first things I said to management, I was like, hey, look, we are not diverse at all, right? And I was coming from Bleacher Report, which, was still primary, like, it's not super diverse, but there was a community of people of color. There was a community of men and women. And when I got to SI, it was lacking, like, immediately. So I pointed that out from the start. And then over time, I just kind of kept voicing, like, listen, we need to do something to address this disparity. So then I kind of took it in my own hands. Like, Clubhouse actually ended up being a massive resource for me because, we were in the midst of a pandemic and proximity didn't matter so much. So I was just trying to find, like, talented people in general. And then I was fortunate enough to come across a young lady named Kwani Lunis, who I had originally met at the NABJ conference. And she and I were talking, and then she introduced me to Greydy, and then Greydy and I were talking, and then I think I happened to run into Ashley in one of the rooms, and I had stayed in communication with them because I recognized early on that they had a talent. And my next goal was like, okay, I need to figure out which lane can I fit you in here? Like, what opportunities can I create for you? And there's others that, people haven't seen on the platform yet, but it's still coming. And unfortunately, Ashley hit me up and said, hey, I got this idea. Like, I really she just wanted to talk sports. And I was like, okay, cool. We figured that out. We got her on board. She came on as a guest. She absolutely killed it. She was phenomenal from the start. And she was actually able to get hired. She just dropped her first videos today, is like hosting and doing analysis and stuff. So that was great. Grady's been doing stuff. We're trying to work on something with her now for, like, sneaker content. So like to the point I said earlier, like, creating opportunities for others is extremely fulfilling to me. So to see where it was when I first started having conversations with them about the very idea of bringing them on board, and now seeing how that's progressed in such a short amount of time is dope. And I'm ecstatic for them, and they're extremely talented, and they have, like, such high ceilings, and they're just only going to continue to blow up. And so I'm, like, super proud of them because they, like, I can bring them to like the river, but I can't force them to drink. And they took their opportunities and ran with it. So, like, shout out to them.
And that is how you create good content, whether you're working for Sports Illustrated or any other sports platform across the land. This is how you do it.
Yeah. I think a big thing is you have to have a vision and you have to have an eye for talent. And one thing I pride myself on is having a good eye for talented people. And I was just like, look, like, you all have a specific skill set. And sometimes I wonder if whatever you're working on now, if that's being showcased in this proper way, right? But because I'm a producer and I, shout out to SI, I kind of have a lot of free range space to kind of just try things. It was just like, look, I see that this is your skill set. I see that this is what you're good at, but you may not be able to do it where you are now. But I think there's a space at SI where you can, blossom. And fortunately, that was the case with Grady and Ashley. And my homie Wilton Jackson, who does stuff for us, he works for SI as a writer, but he did on-air stuff in college. And I noticed that when I first met him, and I was like, well, do you have any interest in doing, like, camera work here? And he was like, well, yeah, no one ever talked to me about it. I was like, well, look, we can bring you on, and I just want to see what you're capable of. And then, he's now become a regular for all our videos. So I'm super proud of it. I'm glad that, again, that the opportunities have come about for them. And, it's good to have different perspectives, right? Like, not everybody thinks the same. Everybody break things down the same. So having, just conversations and getting a sense, like, this is how you think, has been extremely beneficial, and it makes the content that much better. And it's far more inclusive because you feel like you're getting the voice of everybody instead of the voice of a select few.
And that's nice. I was actually watching Ashley and Grady's video earlier, and you know what? She really gets you hyped up for more New York Knicks basketball, if not sports in general. Absolutely. And Grady, she just gets you hyped up for what if the Knicks can exceed expectations. I mean, we all know that the Knicks are not good enough to beat the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers, but we'll get into that discussion later in the conversation. But
listen, Ashley would say otherwise, but yeah, I hear you.
You know what? This is why you put together content. This is why I started Nothing But That Sports Talk, because I had a vision that I could create my own content and cover stuff if I'm not good enough to work for nobody right away.
But this is what I applaud you on, and many others. Like, it's one thing to have a vision and have a plan in place, but execution is the biggest thing. Like, something that I live by is like, it's one thing you'll point out a problem, but if you can't offer a solution, then you're really just complaining. And in the same sense, like, I can have a vision of, oh, I want to do this, I want to try this, but if I don't have a plan of executing it to bring it to fruition or making it manifest, then it just becomes talk. But like, you put like things into action. You say, I'm gonna put this on my own shoulders. I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna do a podcast. I'm gonna do a radio show, whatever the case is. And I'm gonna make it a tangible thing. And sometimes I think people in the creative process, they get to the point where they want to do something, but then when it's time to actually put forth the idea or executing it, they fold. And it just kind of comes to the territory. But like, I just respect you and everybody else that's willing to say, look, I not only don't have an idea, but I have a way of executing too.
Exactly, and that's what it's all about. I mean, if you look at the episodes I've done throughout this is my first 3 years. I've been doing this content for 3 years, by the way, since 2018. When I started as Nothing But That B-Ball Talk, transition into Nothing But That Sports Talk, so I can talk about other sports and trying to cover other sports outside of basketball, because I know other people would want to watch my show. I'm not just bringing in the basketball fans or people that are fans of me, but also fans of other sports in general. Like, for example, interviewing you, because I know you know basketball, working in sports, the people that I've interviewed. That is what networking is all about.
Absolutely.
At least that's part of it.
Absolutely. And it's like, I saw the episode where you were talking to Greydy about the WNBA. I think that's dope. Like, I love the fact that the WNBA has been getting more and more attention. Like my specific time goes far more to the NBA, but like seeing, like, having Greydy on, like, hey Greydy, can you talk WNBA? Like, let's talk about the draft, or let's talk the preview. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, we didn't have anybody do that. Like, that's progress. That's like you said, that's networking. Like when I met these young ladies, I made sure to like, yo, like we were gonna stay in contact, because that something's gonna come from this. And I promise you, it just, things take time. Like, progress is a slow process, but slow motion is better than no motion. So like, we just kept talking and we kept putting ideas together and trying to figure out what we could do. And lo and behold, Grady's on the platform, Ashley's on the platform, Wilton's on the platform. I got some other people coming out too. They're just not there yet, but like, I'm doing all that I can to make sure I'm giving people an opportunity. Like, it's a great feeling.
And I'm doing all I can to get myself opportunities, because ever since last summer, when the WNBA was playing the bubble, I've just been literally racking up any interview that I can, whether it's whether I'm interviewing players for Liberty or the Las Vegas Aces, who was in the finals, or the Seattle Storm, again, who was in the finals, or the Connecticut Sun. It's just a matter of the fact that, I get that they wanted the paid journalists to get the publications, but what about the guys who are working for the ground up, like me? Like, come on now, we're bringing more women's. We're bringing even a small fraction of what the women sports coverage is missing.
Right.
4% of media coverage goes to women in sports.
Yeah,
that's improved at least a bit ever since guys like me or females like Greydy and Ariel Chalmers of Bleacher Report, who I also had on the show a few years ago.
Ari, that's my dog. I was just talking to Ari yesterday.
and Christina Williams of Girls Talk Sports TV. We met ever since I interviewed her, we ran into each other at several basketball events. We saw each other at the Nike JDI Classic. We saw each other. I even showed her a panel. She saw me at an Allen Iverson meet and greet at Soho area. And I saw her at a Julius Randle where Gazan Fabu shout out to him for his work at MSGPM alongside Vic. Just so much people.
Yeah, there's
that
a lot.
Connected with ever since doing this content.
Right. You know what I like? You know what I like about like this? I guess I would call it this era. You've seen a lot of creatives just put things in their own hands. Like, before, it was a time where, like, if you really wanted to do anything, you had to be connected to an organization. But now that's not a thing. And a lot of the times, and me as somebody that looks at resumes a lot, right? Like, I love when I see like students or people that are like early in their career in the industry go out on their own and create their own stuff. Like, that's amazing. Like, I have a mentee, her name is Rachel, and she created a whole Girl of the Game series, and it was super dope. And I was so proud of her. And it actually helped her get her first job when she graduated college. because it was like, look, I have something tangible that I created myself, and I can bring it to your organization and show you why this is beneficial. So that's like outstanding. I love that people are just like creating, right? Like I said, it's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing you can execute it, and that helps, that stands out. And I know when I look at resumes, that's a big thing for me. When I talk to college students that are like trying to figure out like how they get more experience, I said, well, listen, you have the benefit of putting things in your own hand. If you want to be a sideline reporter, go do practice doing sideline reporting stand-ups. If you want to be a play-by-play or color commentator, well, go practice doing it. Like there's so many tangible ways that you can gain experience and put on a resume and say, this is what I did, this is what I'm capable of. So that's just super dope. And I think that this era has been great for that, of like really having creatives create opportunities for themselves.
Exactly. If I'm not if I'm not in the arena covering, doing everything you just said, I'm in the park. I'm in parks like Rucker Park and Dykeman Park. If you don't know,
absolutely.
If you have to have at least acknowledge Rucker Park and Dykeman Park, especially with guys like Kobe and Kevin Durant played on there.
Yep.
Like all you can do is just do your research.
Yeah.
But yeah. Now we're about to transition to some NBA talk, because lately the hottest team in the NBA is the New York Knicks. 7 wins in a row. Like highlighted by a win over the Mavericks, an overtime win over the Pelicans, courtesy of a Reggie Bullock game tying 3. Oh yeah, and there's also the Charlotte win over the Charlotte Hornets yesterday, and they got a chance to pass the Atlanta Hawks for the 7th seed.
Yeah.
Well, and you're not going to hear these talk about this because it's being recorded. You're gonna have to wait for it to be talked about in a later episode. I'm actually interviewing some guys in this basketball league called Crunch Time. I will be getting into to the results of the Knicks and Hawks game in the next episode. So you're not gonna. So look for that. Look out for that. That's all I gotta say. Right now, what do you think the Knicks have to do in order to continue this momentum?
I think the biggest thing with the Knicks is like they play great defense. They're a top 5 defense, right? And if you're a team that plays great defense, you can always count on that to keep you in the game, right? Like one of the reasons why I'm very hesitant on the Brooklyn Nets is like the Nets aren't a great defensive team. Like I believe the stat is no team that wasn't in the top 10 in defense ever won a championship. And that's like 25th, 26th. But the Knicks are top 5. And I like the grittiness of that team. I think it's the Tom Thibodeau, that's his thing. Like, look, I'm going to play my starters big minutes. We're going to defend, and we're going to get after it. And they're a very gritty team, and I love what Randall's doing. I love what that entire young team is doing. And I'm just happy for Knicks fans. Like, I'm not a Knicks fan in the slightest, but, like, I'm happy for Knicks fans to finally have a product that they can be proud of. Like, again, this team is a 5th seed, and the 4th seed is well in their reach. So it's like, I'm super happy for them. And I think depending on who they get in the first round, they're not a tough out, like by any stretch. Like that's going to be hard. And if fans are back in the stadiums to full capacity by the time the playoffs comes around, being the Knicks at MSG will be no easy task. So I'm super excited for Knicks fans. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for Ashley because every time I talk to her, she's talking to me about the Knicks. But yeah, they have a product that Knicks fans should be proud of, and that's dope. Shout out to them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, when I was younger watching the York Knicks, I would say the Knicks are going to make it to the playoffs and win a championship, even when they weren't ready for it. But right now, I can easily say, like literally, you're led by Julius Randle. You got Derrick Rose. If you put 2011 Derrick Rose on this Knicks roster, they're going to the finals for sure, or at least the conference finals. But yeah,
conference finals, maybe conference finals.
But this Derrick Rose. He's slowly gotten back to his old self. Only slowly. The reason why I said slowly because the only thing I can remember him doing from his T-Wolves days is that 50-point game against the Utah Jazz. And when he played for the Detroit Pistons, he had a game-winning shot off the New Orleans Pelicans. But let's not forget, this New York Knicks is just built different. They're built from the ground up. Last year, Julius Randle was averaging 19. This year, he's giving you 21, 22 per game, putting himself in a position for most improved player of the year.
Oh yeah,
when he was playing for the Pelicans.
If he's not, if he's not most improved player, then it's Zion. But I think he should be. Like again, they're the 5th seed. Like they're going to the playoffs. They're going to playoffs. Now I know the East is like super tight, and the difference between the 5th seed and the 9th seed is maybe 2.5 games. But all I gotta do is keep doing what they're doing. Like I fully anticipate that they'll be at the worst, the 5th seed, when the playoffs start. So again, shout out to them. Like, they doing their thing.
Yeah, it's all a matter of how they held themselves for the rest of this homestand and that upcoming 6-game road trip. I mean, the only winnable game they have on that road trip is the Houston Rockets. After that, they got Denver, and even though they did grind out a win against Memphis, they were pretty much gifted that win. It's going to be tough to take out John Morant. Oh yeah, and you also got the Denver Nuggets, who the Knicks have not won in Denver since Jamal Crawford's game-winning shot in 2006.
Right. No, they got a tough stretch. I think they played the Clippers and the Lakers, and by that.
Yeah, they played the Clippers and the Lakers, and they got the Phoenix Suns, who are like Phoenix Suns. We'll get to them in a few seconds. They're like having one of the best seasons since the Steve Nash era.
Yeah. I like. You know, it's funny, and not to move the conversation too forward, but like people ask me like, "What do you think about the Suns? What do you think about the Jazz?" I would say, look, I think they're great stories. I think Chris Paul's impact on teams doesn't get enough credit for what he's done just by being on that Suns roster. I like the Jazz. They're a phenomenal three-point shooting team. They play defense. But if LeBron and AD are healthy, there's no team in the West I'm taking over them. There's not.
Without question. And I'm glad you're starting to realize that, because it's LeBron James.
It's LeBron.
LeBron can beat any team.
It's not even that it's just LeBron, but like having a championship DNA like says a lot. Like last year when Toronto took I believe it was either Miami or Boston, I can't remember, 7 games in a series that should have never won 7 games. Much of that was because that is a team with championship DNA, and they know what it's like to be on top of the mountain. When you've never been there, it's just different. It's just different. And there's so many. The Lakers already at full strength are easily top 3 most talented teams in the league, and you have the championship DNA, and you have the best player in the league, and you got a top 5 defense. They're still out. If I'm correct, they're still number 1 in defensive rating, despite the fact LeBron and AD haven't played together on the court in like 2 months. So it's like they have the formula. They play defense. They have the best 1-2 punch in LeBron and AD. They have a deep roster, and their top 2 guys are going to be well rested. So it's like, I don't know. I always say to people when they say, "Oh, what this team and that team," I say, you have to beat LeBron and AD 4 times. That's a tough ask. That's a tough ask.
Yeah, and when LeBron finally faced Utah and Phoenix in a meaningful playoff series, it's not going to take that long for him to figure out how to do it, or at least be competitive against that team.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's seen everything. He's seen every defensive strategy you can use, and like it's tough when he's the smartest person on the floor and the most talented. And again. And the NBA, like most sports, is about a game of adjustments. Like you have to adjust on the fly. And I'm gonna take a guy that's been in the league essentially 20 years, that's seen all and done all, to adjust to whatever your game plan is. So, you know, good luck to the teams in the West. But I would be shocked if the Lakers aren't representing the Western Conference in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of be shocked as well. I mean, but then again, you're competing with teams like the Phoenix Suns and Jazz. You already talked about how good they are. Oh yeah, and there's also the Clippers and the Nuggets.
Oh yeah, it's a tough road. It's a gauntlet in the West, and there's no easy matchup. Like I think the Lakers are now the 5 seed and the Nuggets are the 4. That could be potentially the first round matchup. If the Lakers drop to 6, you could see a Lakers Clippers matchup in the first round. Like that's a tough slate of series to get back to the finals. But again, if there's one guy I trust to do it, it would be 23. So
exactly. Now we got to get into the play-in tournament teams for the Western Conference. Like, which of the 4 play-in tournament teams that are currently in the stands at the moment are going to be a bigger threat to the Jazz and the Suns?
I might say the Warriors.
Again, I don't blame you. This guy, Stephen Curry, is back to his old self again.
And then some.
Taking at least 8 3-pointers in the last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah. And
look at what he did to the Phoenix. Look what he did to Philadelphia. Yeah. He held his Golden Warriors held their own against Boston, and he shot lights out against the Philadelphia 76ers team that most of the conference struggled to defeat.
Right.
Okay, come on. Stephen Curry can be anybody. But he's at the top of his game.
I think, and again, I mentioned championship DNA. Steph got 3 rings. So it's like, when you've been there, it's just different. And it's not even just because you've been there, but you also understand the pacing through a season, right? Like obviously they're different because there's fighting to stay in the play-in, but if you're within reach, right? You know when it's time to turn the corner and ramp it up as you get to that final stretch, and that's what it looks like Steph is doing. Like, okay, it's time to lock in and get us into the playoffs. And that's what he's doing. And if I was the Suns, or if I were the Suns, or if I was the Jazz, I wouldn't want to play Golden State in the first round. Because again, that championship DNA, on top of the fact that there's nothing you can do with Steph. You can try to throw anything you can. You can shoot everyone on the court. He moves around too much. It's just he's a mismatch for anybody. So it's like that's not a first round series I would want in the slightest. I think Dallas is, I would probably put them two just off of straight talent, with Luka and Kristaps, but Steph is this. Yeah, he's on a mission. He is on a mission.
Exactly. Yeah. And Stephen Curry he may not win MVP this year, but he's definitely going to lead the Golden State Warriors to at least a competitive first round series against either the Jazz or the Suns, depending on where the Warriors ranked up in the standings for the play-in tournament on the Western Conference.
Who do you have as MVP?
Nikola Jokic. Yeah, this guy has the skills of a point guard. Even though he's center, he has the skills of a point guard. He can shoot the three, he can pass, he can rebound, he can get steals, and he can come through in the clutch at times.
Right.
He showed you what he could do.
I think it's Jokic award. I personally think he's already locked it up. And it's funny because like everybody else was seemingly eliminated just through injuries. He's the only guy in the conversation who's played, I believe he's played 57 and 57 possible games. I thought if LeBron would have stayed healthy, that it was his to lose. I thought if Embiid would have stayed healthy, he was in the mix. If Harden would have stayed healthy, he was in the mix. If Dame would have stayed healthy, he was in the mix. But now he's dealing with an injury. So, I mean, he's having a phenomenal season. And to me, I think is locked up. I think Steph is definitely a name in that conversation, but bro, your team's ninth. I can't give you MVP because if we're going off that criteria, just that, oh well, look, I'm just that great and I'm carrying a bunch of C- players. Then LeBron should have won it in 2018 when he took that Cavs team to the finals. So
exactly,
it's the same thing. It's the same criteria. Like, no, you have to be at least a top 4 seed, top 5, unless you had like a Russ season where like it's historic, it's first triple double since Oscar.
So that's the same thought that Shaquille O'Neal said in the pregame last night, where he said that if the Knicks are back, they had to be number 4 seed. I don't blame him for saying that. I don't blame him. I agree with him 100%. The Knicks have to get into the top 4 and get home court advantage in order to be back.
That's fair.
And since we're on the topic of the Eastern Conference, do you think that a Brooklyn Nets team, regardless of whether or not all their top 3 players play, are going to go for a run into the conference finals at least?
I think they get to the conference finals. I don't think they get out of the conference final. So I think, because right now I believe they're the 2 seed.
They're the 2 seed.
I don't think they drop to 3. I think they probably stay at 2, which means they get 7. I think whoever the 7th seed, whoever comes out of the play-in, I think they beat them. I think whoever they place in the second round, I think they probably beat them. Well, I will have one caveat. If they have to play Miami in the first round, that'll be a tough series. But if they get to avoid Miami, I think they get to the conference finals. But I don't think they come out the East. I don't think they beat Philly. And I'll be honest, they should beat Milwaukee, but that could go 7. Like I'm sorry, I just can't trust the team that doesn't defend well. And on top of the fact that like your three guys have only played 7 combined games together. To me, that's a problem.
Yeah,
the chemistry is so important. We just watched what happened with the Clippers last year. I get that they're more talented than like any trio we've seen, but still, chemistry matters. Like assignments matter, communication matters, and it's different in the playoffs. And as great as they are offensively, none of them are the greatest defenders. And if I am a opponent, much like what what Cleveland did with Steph in 2016, I'm going to make you have to defend. You're going to have to expend as much energy on the defensive end as you do on the offensive end. Kyrie's not a great defender. Harden's okay. And then Durant will be the best of the three, but if he's playing down low, what is he going to do? So we'll see. Again, I have no faith in the Nets. It hurts, though, because it hurts. The reason I have no faith in the Nets is combined with the fact that 2 of my co-workers that I work with on a daily basis are massive Nets fans, and they just drool all over them, which has made me have bad blood towards the Nets. So I don't want to see them succeed from that standpoint. But even if I look at it objectively, you're not a great defensive team. And teams that can't defend don't win titles. So
yeah, even though I mean, the playoffs started today, they would face Miami, and let me just show you what Miami did to them the other night against the Nets.
Adebayo against Green. 8 seconds. Bam. Facing up. Gonna run it down. He goes with it. Adebayo for the win. Oh! Count it. Dade County. How do you like Bam, man?
What a shot.
If you can't guard Bam Adebayo in a game-winning shot attempt, how you expect to guard Bam Adebayo in the postseason? Yeah. And do I need to remind you what Bam and Jimmy Butler did with Miami last year at the NBA bubble, leading them all the way to the finals? What is this, the NBA bubble?
Yeah, I it's funny because one of my close friends, me and him always talk about how great Bam is, and sometimes we just wonder if he is not aware of how great he is. I feel like there's a lot of times where he should be doing more, he should be more aggressive. And a series with Brooklyn, he has a mismatch in whoever is guarding him. Like if you put DeAndre Jordan on him because he's just as big, well, he's clearly far more athletic. I know Nick Claxton, is formidable in a sense, but I don't trust Nick Claxton to lock up Bam Adebayo for a 7-game series. And Bam can guard 1 through 5. So like he is such an X factor. And I feel like he can do whatever he wants in a potential series like that. And again, if we're not talking about Bam, we're talking about Embiid. Embiid would do whatever he wants against the Nets, and there's nothing they could do about it. So it's like if they run into a team that can defend and can make the most out of the fact that they're not a good defensive team, and that I don't think they can do anything with a legitimate big, I think they go home.
Yeah, Miami has the potential to upset Brooklyn. Well, not really upset, but give them fits.
Yeah.
Not to mention you got Tyler Hero, who literally balled out against the Boston Celtics last year and balled out in general throughout this season.
Yeah.
Miami
I hope he gets back into rhythm. I know he's been a little out of rhythm. And I saw rumors that he got a little notoriety after the playoffs, and 19-year-old kid getting a little bit more attention. He may not be as focused as he should be, but at the end of the day, if Hero's open and he shoot, you expect him to make it. So yeah, that's dangerous. Him, Duncan, Kendrick Nunn, they got a lot of pieces. I still like what Iggy's doing for them. They got a lot of pieces in Miami.
Yeah, and you know what? I was gonna ask you like which of the playing tournament teams for the Eastern Conference are gonna be the threat to the top 2 teams, but we pretty much clarified that Brooklyn's gonna be a big threat to Miami. Now it's all a matter of which other team that does make it is gonna be a bigger threat to the Philadelphia 76ers. We probably and I would probably give that title to the Indiana Pacers or the Chicago Bulls. I mean, the Bulls kind of gave Philadelphia fits earlier, especially when Zach LaVine made that one-handed dunk. Indiana, if Karis LeVert becomes the Karis LeVert that I admire from his days with the Brooklyn Nets, they're going to give Philadelphia a run for their money.
I think Chicago could give Philly a tough 5-game series. And that's what I mean by tough is, on paper you see a gentleman's sweep, but I don't think those games by any stretch will be blowouts. It reminds me of when Cleveland played the Pacers a couple of years ago and they won that series 4-0. Yeah, but every one of those games came down to the end, right? Like a possession here, a possession there, and those results are completely different. So I think Chicago could give Philly a tough series, but I would still pick Philly in 5 in a 7-game series for sure.
Yeah, and the Charlotte Hornets, they're out of the question. Even when they're getting LaMelo Ball back, let's keep in mind, LaMelo Ball is only a rookie, and he's more of a pass-first point guard other than a scorer.
Yeah, but I love LaMelo. I love LaMelo.
Yeah. I'll give him credit for that Gordon Hayward pickup, and Terry Rozier is just dunking out of his mind. Like when Eric Collins is doing play-by-play for his games, it really gets you into Charlotte Hornets basketball a little bit more.
Yeah, no. They're doing a good job of they're selling these dunks on these live calls. Yeah, I think Miles Bridges too. Like so they got some guys that'll dunk on you. But yeah, I like the direction the Hornets are going. I really like LaMelo, and oddly enough, I feel like if he comes back, because I know he got cleared to practice, if he comes back, he could still potentially win Rookie of the Year, even with maybe like 13, 12 games left. So I think that's his to lose too.
Yeah, and if he does pull out plays down the road of the season, so you might want to turn the volume down when Eric Collins is doing
yes,
because this guy's
he's gonna scream. He's definitely gonna scream.
Oh man, you might want to just make sure you turn the volume down when Eric Collins is calling the game. That's all I gotta say about that one.
Yeah, I forgot who dunked the other night, and
Terry Rozier
volume down, and he just screamed, and I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I gotta keep in mind whenever there's a Hornets highlight to turn the dial down just a tad, because I like my eardrums. So
yeah, and he even does the same thing when Terry Rozier hit a game winner off the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
Well, now concludes this episode. Nothing but that sports talk. Thank you for stopping by, Dakota London.
My
Keep
pleasure.
up the work you do with Sports Illustrated. And to all the big balls out there, get your head in the game. And I can't wait to see how the rest of the NBA and the upcoming WNBA season takes place.
Absolutely.